Hey there, welcome to my YouTube. I am Lola Elonara, an evolutionary astrologer that just has enough to see so much TikTok kind of short video content on astrology where just so much valuable information is going missing. And out of that annoyance, I felt a strong call to study YouTube to actually bring out videos where me and also other astrologers that I am gonna invite into the space can share about astrology, their journey, their lessons, and we can actually do a little deep dive and not just scratch the surface. I live in Berlin and I have studied cinematography the past 5 years and have really realized the past year that working in film is not my path, but it is my passion. So, also, YouTube is just a beautiful platform where I can find my way to combine creating videos and bringing in astrology and just kind of combine both my passions. I also am really excited to just start an interview series because I know so many incredible people with such interesting gifts and stories. And I just want to create a platform where we can like really dive into all sorts of topics. So if you ever feel like you are someone that has an interesting story to share, um, just reach out to me and let's see what happens. But anyway, for my first video, I felt the call to speak about the next really big upcoming transit, which is happening this Sunday in Central European time, which is the nodes of the moon changing signs. Generally, 2025, astrologically speaking, is something we've never seen and experienced before. I'm not an expert on that. There's a lot of amazing videos out there that you can see about the upcoming astrology. But this year is going to be a big one for us collectively, as well as individually, obviously. Um, but let's dive into the topic of the nodes of the moon. And for that, I'm gonna switch over to a little presentation I made. What are the nodes of the moon in astrology? I found this incredible picture, which really beautifully demonstrates how the nodes come into existence because they're neither a planet nor an asteroid. Because the only thing that the nodes of the moon are is where the rotational axis of the moon crosses the path with the rotational axis of the Earth. The nodes of the moon always show us in what signs the eclipses will take place. And this image here really beautifully demonstrates how that happens. As you can see here, there's like the rotational axis of the moon, and it makes this little wobble. So most of the time, the moon transitions over or underneath the axis of the Earth. But between 2 to 3 times in a year, there comes the moment when both of the axes, because like this is the axis of the moon and this big one is the axis of the Earth, there and depending on what archetype that is, we know in what archetype the eclipses are going to be. So, why are the nodes of the moon such an important part of astrology? And that is because they really reflect and show where we are on our journey of evolution in human history. And they really clearly show where we are being asked to evolve towards to and what we are asked to let go of. I've tried to figure out where actually this knowledge comes from. It's hard to actually pinpoint because astrology is so ancient and old. And I guess one of the first starts of working with the nodes we can find in Vedic astrology, where the nodes of the moon are looked at like a dragon, where the North Node is the dragon head. It's what we need to eat, what we need to digest, what we need to integrate and learn, where the South Node is the tail of the dragon, and it kind of shows what we need to purge, what we need to let go of, what we need to just leave behind us and shed our skin. I think that's a very beautiful image to just really remember what the nodes mean and which node is what, because it took me quite some time to be like, okay, North Node, was that now? Was it now the one where I move towards to, or the one where I move away from? So the nodes show us in what archetypes eclipses are going to happen. And the nodes of the moon take around 18.6 years to move through the whole zodiac, which means that around every 1.5 years, they're changing signs. So every 1.5 years, the nodes are moving into two different houses in each of our birth charts, activating different themes and patterns within our life and kind of bring these beautiful karmic lessons where we are kind of have the chance to step up in our game of personal evolution, but obviously also collectively. Okay, so before we dive into what archetypes the nodes are shifting into and what archetypes we're kind of coming from and the lessons of the past 1.5 years, I first wanted to speak about certain misconceptions that I personally had when I started learning about astrology, that I often hear questions that are coming from clients and generally misconceptions that I sometimes find online. So, misconceptions about the nodes of the moon. And the first 2 points are really understandable because it is just a byproduct of the words that I've actually just used myself, literally 3 minutes ago, which is this idea that leaving behind our soft node means to completely let go of that energy, of that pattern inside of us, to reject everything that has to do with the archetype of our south node, when in fact it is way more about take what serves you and kind of move out of the shadow of that energy and leave behind these like low frequencies of that archetype, but actually like hold on to your gifts because there are blessings in our self node. So very often in conversations with other people, I can hear this misunderstanding. And like I said, it's understandable from the phrases that a lot of astrologers use, myself included. But just to put this out there are gifts in your south node, and you're not meant to just let go of all of it. And the same thing again with the north node, just a little bit different, where it is all about like you have to move towards your north node, you have to reach your north node. This is the point where your soul wants you to grow towards to, which brings up this idea that we have to work in order to get to this point. We have to push ourselves through certain lessons and we have to grow up and we have to shed out, when in fact both of the nodes are there always from the moment you have been born. It's never like the North Node is out of reach for us, or that we have to do specific things in order to get there. Yes, there are certain lessons that we're going through and certain patterns that we let go of. that bring us closer to the North Node, but that doesn't mean that there's a certain and specific mm, pathway to it. So, so basically, what I'm trying to say is that I think it is important to let go of this idea that the North Node is something that is like something we have to work towards to and something where we have to put a lot of effort in, when in reality it is always within reach for us, and more so, what did I want to say? Um, and more so, it is something where we naturally move through the evolutionary lessons of that archetype of our North Node without us thinking about it. We will naturally be confronted with relationships, situations, emotions, patterns that automatically give us the chance to break our old patterns and kind of embrace a new version of us, which lies beyond that pattern. So let go of thinking you need to do anything in order to get you to your North Node, because life will show you naturally where you have to go and what you need to do without you trying to push that. I always explain the nodes, which I kind of came up with myself. I've never heard anyone else speak about it. So take it if it resonates, leave it if it doesn't. But how I always describe the nodes is that they're kind of both energetic layers in your auric field that are present since the day you've been born. So the South Node is just an energy where we feel really good and really comfortable, which just makes us feel safe, and it's just so familiar, and we know about our gifts of this energy. So we love to stay in that energetic frequency. It's actually funny. Um, for example, most of the time, if someone's like, "Oh, guess my star sign," I guess the archetype of their south node instead of their rising or their sun, because it's really something that's just specifically in the first 18 years of our lives, or until we have the second nodal return, which happens at 36. It's just, we tend to naturally live a lot more in this energy. And the North Node is just the next energetic layer above that. And we can tap into these layers technically whenever. But the thing is with the North Node, it doesn't feel safe. It's not comfortable. Oh, my light just went out. Um, it's not comfortable. It makes us feel a bit mad. And what actually happens is that very often we are in our south node, and then an opportunity comes where we can kind of shift into this other energetic level, and we kind of are new in this territory, and we kind of are in that energy, and then just look around and are like, oh my God, okay, why am I doing this? This feels horrible. And whoop, we shift back into our known energetic state. And that is why evolution, generally speaking, it's not a linear path. We move towards our north node and we fall back into our south node. And it's this like ongoing back, forward, back pattern until we can actually, until our nervous system can actually embody the frequency of a north node. And that takes time. And that's okay. Okay, next point, which is this misconception that our North Node is love and light and excitement and positive and fun, which is very easy to think by the statement of, oh, this is the point where your soul wants you to move towards to in this lifetime, which sounds like a very nice, exciting journey, which is probably really the perspective that our souls have before we come here. But the truth is that moving into our North Node means getting comfortable with being not comfortable. In my own experience, actually, how the North Node feels and how it presented in my personal life is that there are certain moments that come that make my nervous system go absolutely nuts. That just make me feel anxious and that just make me want to run away. And simultaneously, there's this little tingle in my belly, um, which is this kind of excitement, but it's also fear. And it's just also a lot of anxiety generally moving through my body. And it's a lot to hold. And the easy way in those moments would be to say, like, oh my God, okay, I don't know why this. mm, let's just take the example of maybe you, maybe let's just take this example of your South Node is in Gemini and your North Node is in Sagittarius, which means, again, just an example, there are many, many, many scenarios what specifically this means for you. And it's nothing that you can actually understand by just reading a little description online, because this is so intricately connected to every planet in our birth chart and not just to this point. But let's just make this example easy. So let's say your North Node in Sagittarius is all about moving away from this intellectual, logical environment. Let's say you are in the scientific community and then you fall in love and you meet this new person. Um, but this new person is like the biggest hippie that lives in this free-flowing, loving community and ask you to just stay with them for a month in this community. And the way your nervous system reacts and like the judgments that come up in your mind, you're just like, oh my God, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be surrounded by these people. I don't want to just travel to another country. It's like all these automatic thoughts and triggers coming up in our mind and in our body. But like I said, simultaneously, there's this little tingling in our belly. And the gifts and the blessings of our North Node lie if we can actually hold that horrible feeling and we actually do that thing. So the person travels to that commune, and in the time of being there in this month, they figure out, whoa, I actually am expanding way more than I've done these past years. I'm actually letting my logical mind be way more silent, and their relationship also flourishes and they discover this complete new side of themselves, but still afterwards they can go back and just like bring these new experiences to their old version and to their old community, and they're still happy in their scientific community. Anyway, just a little example, but I feel like it's not spoken about often enough. And then lastly, something that I often see is this thought of, oh, once I've reached my North Node, I met my soul's purpose, and then life is a vacation, and I don't have to evolve in any way. Yeah, very obviously that's not the case. Like there's endless evolution we can go through as human being, any kind of being, and it doesn't stop there. There's so many other astrological systems that kind of, I've been personally getting really into draconic astrology that actually kind of show you what the next journey is after you've really mastered your natal chart of this incarnation. You just move on to the next lessons. So don't think your journey ever ends. Okay, that already was so much information and talking, but here we go. So, for the past 1.5 years, we've had the South Node in Libra and the North Node in Aries. So, South Node in Libra. For the past 1.5 years, it has really been about the axis of you versus I. And we've really been asked to look at where the boundaries between ourselves and the people in our lives are just too fainted, and where we don't have a strong enough sense of self. So in the best case scenario, so if we look back, we actually should be able to see where we communicate our needs and boundaries more clearly. Because the South Node in Libra has been all about harmony for the sake of harmony and at the expense of our own needs. Libra is just so tuned into what everyone else around them is feeling and going through. And they're so obsessed with harmony that it's just so easy to kind of flow with what everyone else needs. And as I'm a Libra sun myself, it often happens in a way that in the moment it feels like the right thing to do. It feels great. And I'm really happy to do what another person suggests. And then I'm doing that. And after like 3 hours, I'm actually realizing, whoa, my body, my body doesn't feel good right now. I'm feeling way overworked and I actually have no capacity to be social anymore, which is a big a big Libra thing to kind of throw themselves into intense phases of having so much social activity and then realizing that it was too much and withdrawing within themselves. Struggles with indecision, wanting to please everyone and avoiding conflict. I've kind of talked about that already. Constantly adapting to the needs of others, leading to identity confusion. Yeah. Libra loves to wear masks, and it really clearly knows what masks to put on depending on what social situation they're in. Actually, I've over this past 1.5 years, I've realized what a highly manipulative energy Libra is in this really, really sneaky way. Because Libra masks their shadow. They act all cute and innocent, but actually they're super intelligent and they know without even being conscious about it. They just know what to say, how to act in order to be seen from the best lens of those around you, and as well just to, yeah, be loved and accepted and to not create any disharmony. So very often they do that also by telling lies or telling half-truths that make the truth sound a bit less extreme. And they actually end up not being true to themselves in any way. They actually end up just playing one role after another. Because of that, their whole sense of self is depending of those that they're surrounded by. So, if I'm constantly adapting to what I think other people want me to be, well, then who am I if no one else is watching me? When I say they, I'm also not saying that every Libra has these patterns. I'm just speaking like mainly about the archetype of Libra and how it can express. But one thing that I always am also really passionate about explaining is that like each archetype of the zodiac, it's like a field of possibilities. And it's like an axis also we move through, or like yeah, we can see it like these waves. So there are certain habits and characteristics of an archetype we have, but then there's others we just bypass and we don't have. So I'm not saying every Libra is doing that, okay? But it definitely is a shadow of Libra, and it also more so has been about seeing where all of us collectively can find these tendencies in our lives and in ourselves. It might not be as extreme as in the examples I'm giving right now, but we all tend to want to belong, and we often end up not being fully ourselves in certain environments. And lastly, because of this over dependence and like adaptation of those around them, Libra can become just so codependent on the people around them that they end up not doing anything ever in the life on their own. Like they constantly need people around them to tell them what to do, to tell them what to think, to just go to the dentist with them or whatever it is. So codependency to a very extreme level. The North Node in Aries has asked us to see where we fall into this pattern of neglecting our own needs. And we've been asked to really put our emotions first. The gift of Aries is the intensity and the impulsivity that emotions arise out of. And we've been asked to like really listen to this first emotion that comes up and to really give space to that emotion and to listen to that and to also not feel bad about that and to know like, my emotions and my needs come first before I can actually take care of anyone else. It's been really about seeing where we're not true to ourselves and to just like remove all these superficial masks and really embrace our individuality and get really comfortable with fully being ourselves. Um, Not an easy task. It's been about seeing what our personal path is and seeing where life wants to take us. Like, what are the things you're passionate about? What makes you get out of bed in the morning? What makes your heart beat faster? And once you have the answer to that, to just really follow down on that route, no matter what anyone thinks about that. It asked us to learn how to be comfortable with being on our own. It asked of us to boldly take action and to initiate things. So, not just to wait around that those around us actually do what we hope they're going to do, but to be the one that's like, okay, no, we're going to do this now. And lastly, also with this Mars currently being in retrograde, Aries really is about our inner fire and our inner anger. I've come to the belief that I think people with lots of Aries placements that have reincarnated with lots of Aries in their chart, it is because there's just so much repressed anger in their system. And that energy is like really asking them to let it out with no filter. And that there's just this big evolutionary need to not suppress your own anger anymore. So it's really seeing that anger is a healthy defense mechanism and it is needed in order to not be stepped on your own toes the whole time. So, like I said, we are coming out of a 1.5 year period of working on these topics and patterns, and hopefully arrive to the point where we are just like standing a bit stronger in our own self-worth and we just know who we are and where we tend to easily neglect ourselves and our needs. So, with this hopefully stronger sense of self as a collective, we are now moving away from the axis of you and I and stepping into the axis of everything versus nothing. Because the North Node is going to move into Pisces, and the major big thing that the South Node in Virgo kind of points to and shows us is that as a collective, we are asked to let go of control. And it can be really easy to look at yourself and be like, oh, I don't have a problem with control. I'm really like fluid and go with the flow, and can adapt easily to all kinds of situations. But control is such an intricate pattern at the depths of all of our psyches. And there are so many different ways that control can show up in our lives. The way we control other people, the way we want to control life, the way we like want to control our emotions, the way we structure our day. There's a lot to it, but generally speaking, we are asked to find our sense of unity again when the North Node is in Pisces. So it's really time for all of us to see where our individuality is important and good, and where we can actually be in service through who we all individually are, and which as a society we've really overstepped, like where we are just way too focused on me, just me, and completely lost the contact to the whole context of the world and society, and where we really need to let go of our egoistic, individualistic thinking. So, the South Node in Virgo, here we go. Okay, so the South Node in Virgo asks of us to stop micromanaging our lives in order to feel a sense of control. I think so many of us are in this habit of just constantly thinking about what we're going to do next, which is one of the most unnecessary things one can ever think about, because it just takes away the beauty of the present moment. And in the end, we're going to do what we're thinking about we're going to do. And the only reason why we're thinking about it is because we feel so anxious on our insides, and that we have to feel above our own lives by engaging in this behavior. I think it's really an earth sign tendency to do that. It's definitely also something that's really active in myself. It's something that used to be a lot more active. I've learned to let go of that a lot more, and it's worth it. Virgo loves to think itself into crisis, so it's really good at overthinking to the point of paralysis, thinking about everything that could go wrong, thinking about everything that doesn't feel right, and just creating a crisis within your own psyche. Virgo is all about purification. It's the priestess archetype. Looking at the archetypes in terms of evolution, where Leo wants to make the ego bigger than what it is, and to like really shine and be seen as this big, beautiful bulb of light. Virgo, as a response to that behavior, then kind of indulges in the opposite pattern, where it's really about humbling ourselves and seeing our own flaws, and seeing kind of what we have to purge out of our bodies, our minds, our characters out of a life, in order to then arrive in Libra and enter into relationships in a harmonious way, and not in a way where we make ourselves bigger than who we are or less than who we are. The funny thing though is that as a response to like Leo's self grandeur, it just becomes as obsessed with themselves than Leo is, by thinking one is too bad for the world. No matter what I do, it's not good enough. No matter what I create, it's not perfect enough. No matter what I do, I have to be better, put in more work. So feeling unworthy or inadequate despite constant effort is something we really need to shed. Virgo tends to be their own worst enemy, always comparing themselves to who they were in the past, trying to obtain this impossible goal of perfection. So really look at yourself, like where can you see this in your life? Is it the work you do? Is it does it show up in your relationships? Does it show up in your creativity? Where do you have such high standards about yourself that your own thoughts block you from experiencing the beauty of what you do? Imagine if you wouldn't be so critical about certain aspects of your being or your creativity, who would you be? What would you have shown to this world? So, where do you sabotage yourself in a way that it stops you from doing what brings you joy? Virgo also loves to be in service and to truly help other human beings. If you have a good Virgo friend, you will know what I mean by that. And like I said, it's the archetype of the priestess. So it's all about others coming to us and then giving back our service and like really helping them through what they're going through. But Virgo can tend to also sacrifice their own needs in order to be that helpful person. And it's also really built on this belief of like, I'm strong, I'm tough, I can deal with everything, I can do everything myself. Another big shadow of Virgo is kind of like doing everything on their own because other people are just not doing it in the same with the same perfectionism as yourself. So teamwork is often a very tricky thing that Virgos don't like to indulge in. These are the main aspects of Virgo that we are meant to find in ourselves and in our lives. Okay, I got a bit lost in my mind. Um, anyway, this is where we are asked to observe ourselves and to purge the patterns that actually just are coming from a very unhealthy, unrealistic expectation of ourselves. And Pisces has the beautiful gift of just really living in surrender to life. Pisces is the last archetype of the zodiac. It carries seeds of every archetype that came before it, and it is already so closely connected to the cosmos, to the place where we all came from, where we're all gonna go back to, that it knows it doesn't need to control life and it doesn't need to control our way of being and our habits because the ultimate goal of living in this human body is to come into reunion with our soul and to let higher energies flow through us and to live life not out of this logical mind understanding, but to actually feel and see where life takes us. We actually don't realize how often we block ourselves from way more beautiful things than what we think about. If we actually let go of control, things can unfold that are so greater and bigger than anything our mind can come up with. So we need to let go of rigid expectations about ourselves and life. We need to learn how to allow ourselves to be human and to be imperfect because, yes, of course, we are all here to experience evolution and to evolve and develop. So, yes, we are all here for evolution and to evolve with the cycles of nature. But that's the thing. We will naturally evolve no matter if we're trying to control it or initiate it, or if we just wait with an open heart and see what things come to us. And that's the gift of Pisces. It knows it doesn't need to plan every step, and that actually spirit, the cosmos, whatever you like to call it, will bring what you need, your lessons, your gifts, your relationships, your desires to you without you needing to change, control it. So we are really asked to let go of our constant need of productivity, scheduling our day, and engaging in self-betterment, specifically in the spiritual community. It's so easy to fall into the trap of trying to attain enlightenment and perfection and to like get rid of all our traumas. And while working on our traumas and shadows is a beautiful thing and a necessary thing, again, it will happen in our lives anyway when it is the time to. We don't need to fixate on it and constantly try to obtain a version of ourselves that already exists if we would stop thinking that it doesn't. Pisces has an incredible intuition. And with our upcoming development of AI and of never knowing if any person you see online is actually a real human being or a machine, our intuition becomes such a major key in navigating life. Because how can we tell a human that was generated by a machine apart from an actual human? And the only answer to that is, does it feel real or does it feel off? Does it feel lifeless? Can you feel the pulse, the energy flowing behind a profile, or does it feel dead? A very nice example that I've heard in an interview somewhere was, movies that are like all the props, all the art department, like everything is just real sets, real costumes, real nature, real effects. Everything has been built by hand by artists, and it just like draws you into this beautiful world. And then there are movies where everything is CGI. So it has the same visual effects. It has the same beautiful costumes or locations, but it doesn't give you the same, it doesn't move you. It doesn't feel real. It feels empty. So that's the only way we can actually, from this point on, tell if someone is a real human being or not, is if we learn how to truly tune in and listen to all the subtle energies moving through our body. So there has never been a time where we've been more disconnected from our intuition and a time where we needed more than ever before. Again, we can think back to the lesson of the North Node in Aries, where we started to learn and to recognize these impulses that are coming up in us, starting with our own needs and emotions. But that's also how we connect deeper to our intuition. It's like this the first voice in our mind. It's the first feeling that comes up. And to not talk ourselves out of it, but to actually be so still and present that we can hear it. And being present is also a big, big, big key with the North Node in Pisces. We are asked to see the emanism and the interconnectedness between all these different aspects of life that we see as separate, because they're not. They're not separate. And emanism and like starting to see the world as a living being is just so important if we want to make it. In Pisces, we are reaching a state where we turn back into oneness, where we have realized that everything is just one and there is no separation. And because of that, it is also time where we really are asked to cultivate our compassion and to see where we've been living out of alignment and away from connection to our hearts. Okay, we are at the end of this rather long presentation, but I hope whoever's watching this that you can take something out of it. Lastly, here are the two parts of eclipses that we will go through this year, which are the times where these themes that I've spoken about are just becoming the most present in our lives. And eclipses also always happen in pairs, so there are always three eclipses. There's kind of this pattern you can see with eclipses where like the first eclipse introduces to you what the topic is for you. Then the second kind of tests how much you've worked on it and how much you actually understood what's happening. And then the third one is, in the best case scenario, just a confirmation of how you've grown and how you've changed. But if you haven't done the work, the last one is very often a time where your life just falls apart a little bit. So thanks so much for everyone that is watching this. It was actually so much fun. I didn't plan for this video to be so long. I don't know if anyone will actually watch this, but anyway, I had fun. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, just leave them down below. And I actually already have another video lining up, which is also a very beautiful deep dive into Pluto of Aquarius. So stay tuned. Bye bye.